we cannot find a better person to talk about the qualitative research. And he himself is a practitioner of yoga, and he also is a researcher in the field of yoga. So, Dr. Rajesh Pandey.
Thank you, Ashish sir, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know there is limited time, but I would build upon the ideas which I have learned in your and Dr. Rudraksh's narration. So first of all, as you had said, yoga, am I audible?
Yes. And I'll request you to please, I like this is the hazard of being a teacher. I extended again my time of 6 minutes.
No
Please
problem.
take this, and I hope the participants will be generous to spend a little more time and remain with us during this deliberation.
No problem. So, as Professor Ashish was telling, yoga became popular in so many countries, and World Yoga Day became recognized. So, as a researcher, there are many lessons to draw from it. How did a concept which originated in uh, our country was repackaged and accepted, when our concepts have been repackaged and accepted but changed according to their convenience and repackaged back to us for so many long years? How did yoga became suddenly very popular? Okay, so that is where uh, many of our uh, subjectivities, many of our collective thinking mechanisms, many of our business insights, cynical thinking, critical thinking, all of those lenses get activated. For example, was that uh, was that thing a payout to Mr. Narendra Modi, who was becoming very popular? जब नरेंद्र मोदी बोल रहे हैं तो कैसे दुनिया वाले उसको मना करेंगे ना, सब मानना पड़ेगा. Maybe people had business intentions कि इंडिया वालों को योगा डे हम मान लेंगे तो we will get a sneak through into Indian market, and there is a huge consumer market. So these are very philosophically disturbing but plausible explanations. Then you can also think of a very genuine explanation where yoga was able to solve some of the problems which others were not able to solve. So whatever be the package, they took the medicine. For example, in today's time, coronavirus, you come up with a miracle cure and you don't substantiate it. Do people take it or not? Many people will actually if you convince them that there is no harm in taking this, many people will actually try out those medications. So desperate times, desperate measures, and that's why yoga became very popular, because it was not being solved by the conventional medications. Okay, so different way to look at the same phenomenon, different ways to look at the same phenomenon is the basic of research. Okay, that is what Professor Ashish Pandey was telling. A critical thinker would not stop at the most plausible explanation. Mujhe mil gaya, I have found this explanation and now I can explain this phenomenon. No, you have to look at multiple levels, multiple layers, and you will be amazed to find out that the same phenomenon can be looked at from the multiple angles, and you will find very different insights. For example, if that was to convey to India that you open up the market, I will open up yoga for you and you open up the market, that's a very cynical way of looking at things. While the latter part, yoga providing solutions for which my medications, my medicine system was not able to provide solutions, then it's a very benevolent way of thinking the same thing. But the phenomenon is the same, that yoga became very popular across the world. Okay, so first of all, how does this critical thinking, critical lens get activated, or you can activate as a researcher? It's your duty. So first of all, let us go back to the framework which Professor Ashish Pandey was telling you. There is a right side which is objective and there is left side which is subjective. Whenever you start questioning things, whenever you start questioning the basic things, which are there, even if it is there in the literature which you are reading for 5,000 years, then the uh, critical thinking starts getting activated, and that is what is the duty of the researcher. So first of all, as a researcher, you should acknowledge that most of our things are very subjective, and when the research is happening in the objective domain, you are going to uh, neglect more than 50%, I would say much more than 50% of the insights which are there in the field. Qualitative research is provides us an opportunity to look at a phenomenon. So there are only two ways to justify qualitative research. And why I'm saying only two ways to justify, these are the two ways which are accepted by the Western journals. So unfortunately, our research needs to get accepted into the Western journals to get back to our own audience. Okay, so it has to bounce. So हमारे यहाँ से कुछ निकलेगा, एक बॉल जाएगा, वो जर्नल से रिफ्लेक्ट होके आएगा, तभी we will accept it. Those journals actually have a very strong bias towards objectivity. That is the right side of the continuum, which Professor Ashish Pandey was saying. So objectivity is portrayed through numbers. So when I say 6 out of 10 and 8 out of 10, so one person got 6 out of 10, one person got 8 out of 10, you would definitely say 8 wala is supposed to be more intelligent or performing better in the mark in the exam, etc. But go deeper. Is 8 always better than 6? What if this person uh, who had got 6 was actually sick throughout the year and could study only for 1 week? Or what if his set of questions were slightly more tough than the set of questions which a person got 8? What if the examiner was lenient? What if the language was different? Okay, so all of these things, when you start analyzing, then you will find that 8 might not be bigger than the 6 itself. So that is where our problem lies, that we accept numbers as objective, and numbers are not at all objective. They are subjective. Numbers are dry. If you want rus or juice in your research, you have to look beyond numbers, and that is why the importance of qualitative research. The Western journals, however, say that only two major aspects justify qualitative research. One is the phenomenon is novel. So I don't understand, I can't measure because its phenomenon itself is novel. How can I start measuring it? So one is novel phenomenon, and second is processual understanding. So for example, if I am moving from A to B, I can measure point A and measure point B, but I can justify qualitative research to identify the path which was used for moving from point A to point B. So when we see yoga based research, many of the research which Professor Ashish Pandey was also pointing out, that when somebody does yoga, the BP comes down. This is like point research. So I do BP analysis in point A and BP analysis in point B. In between, I do yoga, and I see that the BP has come down by 10 mmHg, and that is where my research focuses on. But if I want to understand the path, then it becomes important to undertake qualitative research, and that is the strength of qualitative research, which allows you to examine novel phenomenon and processual aspects of yoga. And when we see yogic traditions, why I would say yoga requires qualitative research, because yogic traditions are not, yogic practices are not directed towards one part of your body. For example, doing surgery and getting rid of cancer, or giving radiation and getting rid of cancer. This is not what yogic practices do. They address problems at multiple levels of being itself. For example, Annamaya Kosh is the external body. Then pranamaya kosh is the processes which take place inside your body, the micro processes. Then there is buddhi, then there is man, and then there is anand. And all of these different levels of being are affected by yogic practices. What we do when we reduce our yogic practices research to measure BP is to measure only a part of annamaya kosh and a part of, say, pranamaya kosh. Other koshas we neglect, and that is. And are these related? Definitely, they are very much interrelated. For example, um, uh, let us take diabetes, and you will be surprised to see how fast the field has developed and acknowledged many of the things which we have been talking about centuries, that uh, that has a lot of implications for management of diabetes. For example, people now understand that it's a psychosomatic disorder. So psycho comes first, somatic comes later. Psycho is the psyche, the mind, and the brain, and the somatic is the external body, which is represented by some measurements. uh, the blood sugar is controlled by psyche. So if you reduce stress, the blood sugar will be controlled. Now, again, this is a very reductionist way of looking at the things, that A leads to B. When you want to understand the holistic changes which yoga makes in a person, that is where the subjectivity, the processual understanding will come through. And you might find that there are various ways in which the BP reduces. So finally, point A start with BP of 120/80, point B end with 110/70. But how do you reach the path? The path traversed would be very different for each person, and that is where the subjectivity and the processual analysis comes into the picture. uh, Most importantly, what Professor Ashish Pandey said was, language is a big control. So whenever we translate some uh, concepts from our vernacular languages to English, which is the traditionally accepted language by journals, we lose a lot of meanings. We lose a lot of meaning. So mindfulness, uh, as Professor Ashish Pandey was explaining, it is not only being aware of the present. Okay, that is only 1/5 of its conceptualization. Even if you see the original conceptualization of mindfulness as explained in the Western literature, awareness is only 1/5 of the different dimensions of mindfulness. But as it was taken forward, suddenly the mindfulness became only the mindfulness with respect to the external environment and awareness about ourselves. So that is where a lot of things get lost while translation. And when it is important for us to conceptualize the the literature in such a way that, and then translate the literature in such a way that the concepts don't lose the meaning. Because as soon as the concepts lose the meaning and you are translating it into other languages, you have, as a translator, you have the right to reposition it in a different form. So they will say that this concept is derived from that, but it is very different, so it is in my name. Okay, so that is where our in-depth knowledge gets reduced to very superficial concepts. And our Rishi Rin is about going back to our literature, understanding the concepts, and extracting those concepts as a whole. Then to put in the words in which people understand. People means journals or Western scientific world understands. And there are multiple aspects to this. One of the thing being, you will be heard only if you are speaking their language, and you will be heard only if you are talking to their problems. So if you are solving your problems, you will not be heard. You should be solving the problems of the world. Even if you are solving your problem, take that solution and solve the problem of the world. For example, chloroquine, you were solving the problem of malaria in India and such countries. But suddenly, when this same drug started solving the problem of a global disease, the benign thing which was only present in India is now exported everywhere. So you have to remember three things. One is, you have to solve problems of yourself, but package it in such a way that it also solves the problem of somebody else. You have to have the language in which to communicate with them. And the third is very important aspect is, don't let the holistic meaning get reduced. So if these three things are done, then it is possible to take these things forward. And qualitative research in general will be very helpful, because the very fact thing that qualitative research is holistic, and it allows you to explore the concepts in detail with along all of its facets and dimensions. It will be helpful in taking it forward from there. So I think that qualitative research is a huge there is a huge scope for qualitative research in yoga based research. The second aspect is, Ashish Pandey sir talked about collaboration and conversation. This is very important for many of our, or I should say, rejuvenating our research potential. So, as somebody was saying, whatever is written in the books or scriptures or literatures is like dead bodies. लाशें हैं वो जो लिखी हुई हैं. Unless and until you take those words into your conversation, they are like dead words. If you read a book and just apply like that, they are like dead bodies. What you have to do is, you have to take it into the heart, into the brain, into your tongue, into your voice, and then converse with each other. That is where the life comes back to the scriptures. So that is where what we need to create is a very vibrant ecosystems, where you would be surprised to know that even medical people are very much interested in these research. Management people are interested in these type of research. Scriptures people are ready to indulge deep into the meaning of the scriptures. So why not to bring all of them together? The problem is that all of us work in silos and we want quick results, whether it is cure for corona or whether it is publication output. We want very fast results, and these things will not come through fast results. And that is where the ecosystem need to be generated. I will go back again to the example of diabetes. When I was reading MBBS in the endocrinology chapter in MBBS, the normal blood sugar was 140. Anything more than that was diabetes. When I was doing my MD, the normal blood sugar became 126. And now, after so many years of practice, people say normal blood sugar is 108, 110. So that is where what has made these corrections to be made in, and my practice is not that long, it's 20 years. In 20 years, how the levels have changed, what has changed in the philosophy. And I would be very much interested in knowing how our ancient scriptures have described Madhumeh. And in general, it is very interesting to see that while I was studying MBBS, nobody talked about the food and the importance of gastrointestinal system in diabetes. People were talking about pancreas and insulin. People were not talking about the importance of gastrointestinal systems in medicine, in diabetes. By the time I did my MD, people were recognizing that there are in the gastrointestinal system itself, there are receptors which will trigger insulin, which will inhibit insulin, etc. And it is very important to control those aspects of gastrointestinal system. And then a new stream of drugs were invented or discovered which affect that part of gastrointestinal system, does not affect pancreas or insulin. So you will see that when we go to our ancient literatures, they have always talked about Agni and the जो अपने उदर की अग्नि होती है, that is a very important part of controlling our energy, our vitality. And that is where how that translation of Agni will become fire, and that is where our meaning will be lost. That is where our linguistic capabilities to convey the meaning into their language will be important for us to understand this concept that gastrointestinal system is one of the major systems which control the hormone, which came into the only in the later part of the 20th century, was conceptualized much before in our literature. And that is where, how do we present these concepts which are important for us and for them, because most of the diseases are now global, including the current pandemic, in the same language which they know and which they accept without losing the meaning. This is where our focus should be. And two things are important for it: accept qualitative research as, because it helps you to understand the process and analyze any novel phenomenon. And the second part is, how do I uh, construct an ecosystem for research in yoga based practices and its effect on various aspects of life. I think it's time and I should stop.
So thanks very much, Dr. Chandani, for pointing out a very important point about pointing out the potential of the yoga research. Can I request you to also mention some of the research methods which might be useful
Yeah.
along?
Yeah. So many of those subjective feelings, subjective experiences which you want to explore when you are doing qualitative research. So that is where the beauty of qualitative research lies. As Professor Ashish was saying, many of us will be practicing yoga. Many of us would be having access to people who are practicing yoga for multiple years. So what happens when a person starts practicing yoga? Is the experience different in, say, first 6 months versus say after 6 years of continuous practice? So I think this is what is very important for us to understand. How do I gain access to this information? And now there are multiple ways in the qualitative domain itself. There are multiple ways to go in depth in deeper things. For example, what do we mean by qualitative research? Anything which is not numbers is included in qualitative research. So is it some picture, is it some word, is it some sound, or say experiences narrated in words? All of this will come under the domain of qualitative research. Two broad aspects of qualitative research, I would say, is action research and qualitative approach. Action research, you are a part of that action, and here lies the beauty of the application of qualitative research for yoga practices. Many of you would be part of some yoga practices or implementation programs or some intervention programs. You can use action research where you are a part of action. Normally we will say researcher should be away from action so that they are not biased. Sakshi hona chahiye. You should not be a part of the research. But there is what happens when you gain knowledge while you are in practice. That part is known as action research. So if you can look at action research tradition, you can use the first person experience, empiricism, plus the action of, say, even at a collective level. If I am doing some intervention and that intervention I'm a part of, then I can follow the action research method. I can use for a Sakshi researcher who is not involved in the process itself, I can use the other qualitative approach. When I use the qualitative approach, I can analyze words, conducting in-depth interviews. And there is an art to conduct interviews. When I conduct interviews, say first time people might not open up, there is a second time, there is a third time, there is a fourth time, and I can also see what is happening in the household. Just to give you an example, when we were though this is not related to yoga, I would divulge from that field. For example, when I was doing some research in diabetes related food practices, what people adopt in after, say, 6 years, 7 years of diabetes, they have been coming to the dietitian and the doctor for and the endocrinologist for so many years, how does their food habits change in reality? So what do I do? How do I can give them a questionnaire, but when I give doctors and they administer a questionnaire, everybody says I follow whatever doctor says, but blood sugar to control nahi hai. So what I did is I went to their household to examine what they cook, how they cook, what is kept in the kitchen, what is kept in the fridge. Now this I can do it by questionnaire method, but it will be very superficial, because when I go and understand, talk to them about how do they manage kitchen, how do they buy groceries, have the groceries buying habit changed over years, that is where the insights about dietary changes will come in. Because diet in our system is uh, not individual phenomenon, it's a household phenomenon, and that is where the level also comes into the picture. In western societies, for them, you may be an individual when it comes to cooking or consuming, uh, but in Indian context, you don't consume as an individual, you consume as a family. So it was but natural that I should go to the household level and examine the dietary phenomenon. So this is where now what happens if, how will I tell them that this is an important insight? Then I have to use their language, their problems, and frame the situation, frame the insights in such a way that they become excited about this finding. So what I need to say is, there are multiple ways in which you can examine qualitative research. You can examine photographs, you can examine pictures, you can examine videos, you can examine words, you can narrate experiences. All of these things are allowed in qualitative research. You can use various tools to get data. CCTV is one, interviews are another, and there are multiple other ways to gain data. And analysis of data again can follow multiple routes, where you are uh, using coding as a technique, or you are using interpretive theory building as a technique. So there are multiple techniques where you analyze the data in a prescribed format. Why do I say prescribed format? Because they would understand this language. Okay. So I hope within a short time I was able to sum up a lot of things.
Yeah, thanks very much, Dr. Chandwani. Uh, I was wondering how a great combination will be if a good conceptual work is being carried out empirically with a good qualitative work. There's a lot can be done. That Dr. Sakrikar was saying that the concepts has power and they have to be understood properly. And when it is combined with the qualitative insights, I think phenomenal work is waiting to be awaited. I hope uh, some of us will be able to take it forward. And when we meet next year, our intention is that we'll continue this conference year after year and pre-conference. Some of you will come as a paper presenters and share your insights uh, on the on an area of your work. So thanks very much again to Rudraksh and Dr. Chandwani, Mukul as inspiration to all of us as well. Uh, Here, formally, the first session of the pre-conference workshop gets over. But as I wrote in the chat box that we'll be available in case you wish to take forward the conversation, if you wish to ask a question or share your observations or insights, you are most welcome. I know there's a lot of wisdom in this room. There are a lot of practitioners here. There are people who have already done research. There are amazing teachers. All of those are here in the room. I'm pretty aware of that, and I'm humbled about that. So we will be available, and we can carry on this conversation. You can keep please, you can unmute yourself. You can keep your video also open, and that's it. Otherwise, as the program is, we will be meeting at 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock, Dr. Shirley Tellis will share her insights about how to design research. And I think being interested in the yoga research, most of you must have heard this name and must have read her papers. She's, I can say confidently, that she's the most prolific researcher in the field of yoga, and predominantly worked in the field of neurophysiology. But she is well versed with the other physiological aspects of the research related to yoga. So her session is on the how to design a good research study. And then there are two exemplars. She led and designed the study, and two of the members of her lab, Sachin ji and Deepak ji, will be there to share how they designed those particular studies, what were the things they took care of, and what was the insight and empirical and methodological insight as well as the research insight. So that's 3 o'clock. Please log in 5 minutes before, because we will start at on time. Start on time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashish. And thank you for honoring that, maybe everybody has something to offer, and that maybe someday some of us can also present. Thank you. That was very, very touching and beautiful.
Yeah, we sincerely believe that we will be able to strengthen the community of researchers. There's a very famous statement which I remember my teacher always says, that research is an individual pursuit with universal intent. So though it's an individual journey, but intent is always universal. In that kind of pursuit, the importance of community is very important. Its importance of community is very high. And it is in the community where the collaboration happens. It is in the community where we challenge each other. It is the community where we get inspired by each other. So that spirit, we have started this Yogast conference, and we hope that we'll remain as a community, learning community.
You may unmute yourself, those who want to do conversation.
Yeah, thank you for a great session, Professor Pandey.
So you will be meeting Professor Bapat tomorrow, day after tomorrow. Tomorrow he will be chairing a session, and he is a finance person, an ardent yoga practitioner, and a certified teacher of yoga. And he's our colleague. He teaches in School of Management in Hyderabad. So we're meeting him in one of the parallel sessions for the paper presentation.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, Maheshji.
So we have emphasized so much about Bharatiya Shastras and our literature, our knowledge, and you gave a beautiful concept of Rishiran. I want to understand that in our management libraries, why do we lack these books, and why do we have research work of the foreign authors? Because the students of management will then go into the Indian organizations and they will replicate the work of foreign authors. Why not train the Indian minds into this literature? And why not introduce a management, a subject of, Indian Darshan, Bharatiya Darshan in management studies? I'm unaware that if this is happening, or, I would like to understand from your point of view, what is the scope in management for, management schools? Thank you.
Maheshji, we don't have the books and well-written books, and not the concepts and the cases, and not enough in number, which our students, which our teachers find worthwhile to share with their students, and practicing manager find worthwhile to implement at the workplace. Because we don't write enough. That's a very straightforward answer. We don't write enough. Rajeshji, what is your take on this?
Yeah, so I'm not against putting out uh, putting out work of other people in the library. So we don't progress by inhibiting knowledge, whether it is reductionist or whether it is not appropriate. What you can do is, over the time, invest in such endeavors that will bring out our knowledge, and students and teachers can themselves actually see value in our traditional wisdom, and that is where the 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 comparing and the contrasting and those things will happen. And that is why, as all the scholars have been talking about this since morning, it is important to be critical not only of westerners, but critical also of the knowledge which we have incorporated in our scriptures. The most important part, which I think Rudraksh sir highlighted beautifully, was how the same word has different interpretations, and that 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 aspect you cannot measure quantitatively. When you have different interpretation of same words, how can you actually measure it in numbers? It cannot be translated.
Hello?
Because some numbers which he
Oh,
was telling was plus, and some numbers which he was telling was minus. The same word has a positive and a negative connotation.
right.
These beauties can
Do
be
one thing.
extracted and presented
You
in such
said
a way
what?
that
You do one thing. You WhatsApp me on this
the
number.
value derived from these beautiful conceptual analysis and their application is much more, or much better significant insights are drawn, then only it will be accepted by the practice and the researchers and the management education. I think
Yeah,
you should not
that's
see it
so.
as a very short-term phenomenon. It's a very long-term endeavor, and I think Professor Ashish Pandey and his team are doing a lot of work to ensure that this happens, maybe if not in our lifetime, then maybe in the next generation at least.
And still there is some work, though there is some minimal work is still there. For example, work of Professor S.K. Chakravarti on the
Yeah.
Rajarshi model of leadership or giving model of motivation. That's an excellent work, Maheshji. And work of Professor J.V.P. Sinha on the Indian mindset is a complete work in itself. Nurture and task leadership. Again, a dozen studies being conducted, well-established concept, widely quoted across the world. We have concepts and a lot of interesting models given by Professor Subhash Sharma. A very famous book of Dr. Subhash Sharma is Western Window, Eastern Doors. There are some studies where uh, there is some literature available. The more unfortunate thing is that we have not built on that. So we need to identify those literature and build on that. No one else will do it for us. We Indians have to do it for ourselves. If we think that we deserve better theories, if we think that we deserve our concepts, the concepts developed in this culture have the potential to influence for the better to the world of management or technology or whatsoever.
Sir,
Professor, could I ask?
sir, good afternoon.
Yes, please go ahead.
I would like to say something.
Yes, Madam Pani.
Yes, I am Dr. Amrita Pani. I teach as a guest faculty in Utkal University.
Okay.
As sir said about including Indian ancient literature in management education, and we have subject Indian ethos and values in our integrated MBA program for MBA students. It's based on that ancient Indian literature, Gita, yoga things, and its applications in management.
That's very interesting. I really appreciate that there are some universities where the courses of this kind are offered. The concern still is there because it is very individual centric still.
Yes.
People
Yes.
have their experience, people have their exposure and the in-depth knowledge, and they share with their students, immediate students. There is a dearth of well-crafted, created knowledge which does justice to the field of management as well as the Indian wisdom tradition.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
That's why we need to have more research papers, more books, more courses on NPTEL. Then probably we'll be able to deal with, able to fill this gap.
Professor, can I ask you a question? Because this is something that's been weighing on my mind for maybe many years now, because I'm actually American, though my name comes up as Soumya. Yeah, I was born and raised in the US, mostly in my guru's ashram, I would say, but in a very Indic-centered family or Indic-oriented family. But we keep talking about this concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and now I live in Bangalore, and I run a small NGO that brings yoga therapy to under-resourced communities. But we talk about this concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and I do understand the need. Like I do say, honestly, I'm planning my PhD in yogic studies, but I'm thinking, let me go to the US because there are more resources available. And the ability to research is so much greater than in India. Now, and I also have family issues, but that's besides the point. But how can we look at Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and say, okay, you know what? These people may not be Sanskrit scholars, and they may not even be from an Indic background, like in terms of their cultural or their ethnic heritage, but that they still bring a lot of value to the field. I mean, how can we bring back that concept of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam? Because shouldn't we see yoga as belonging to the universe and not necessarily to just one space and one, and I mean, it's just something that's been weighing on my mind because I'm here in India wanting to research in India and wanting to learn more about yoga in India, but still having to go back because, as you say, there's not a lot of literature coming out of India. And so then I feel, okay, well, I want to go where I'll be if I do a degree at Harvard, then I'll be recognized and I can get a job anywhere in the world and I can become, established. But if I do a degree at PhD or and do my PhD there, then the likelihood of my being recognized in the field is much less. And being able to get a job in this field, a research opportunity or an academic position is much less because there are more and more universities in the US that are looking at, hey, we're looking for a somebody who's researching organizational management and yoga or Ayurveda or psychology and Ayurveda. And we're looking at somebody to do this we want that person. And we want to study Sanskrit. In fact, some of the best Tamil program I'm a Tamilian myself, but the best Tamil program in the world is at UC Berkeley under George Hart. I don't know if he's still there. I don't think he's still there. George and Kamala.
I know there is a chair, the Tamil literature, Agam literature chair was there.
Yeah, George and Kamala.
Yeah.
I used to know them a long time ago, but they were uncle and auntie at that time. And I'm no longer, now I am uncle, now I am auntie. But how do we reconcile these?
Yeah, these are really interesting questions and puzzling questions, issues rather. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that's the first point, totally agree. I have been involved with the Indian psychology movement. So there is an institute in Pondicherry called Indian IPI, Indian Psychology Institute. There our first conferences took place. Matthias ji, unfortunately, he's not able to make it day after tomorrow. His name is already there in the brochure. If you look at the Indian Psychology Institute website, where most of our papers are also loaded, it says that Indian psychology doesn't mean it is psychology by Indians or for Indians. It means psychology, the insights of the psychology arising out of the text or wisdom traditions developed in the Indic culture, but they are relevant and they may be and they can be relevant to the whole world. So there is no claim of the Indianness in terms of the copyright or intellectual property. There is a need to acknowledge the Indian root because that is important to remain connected to the tradition. And when we connect to the tradition, there are the checks and balances, and there are the nuances in the field. There is, even within the tradition also, you come across many practitioners. The tradition means it has a community. So all those things which are important for the academics and academic development are there in the traditional communities. And that's why it is important to, and there are many other texts and there can be multiple interpretations of that. So, and this is a living system. So we need to have the living body, a community, which we need to look at, and whatever knowledge is being created, we should not dissect it, we should not disconnect that from that tradition. So that's why it is important to acknowledge there are some untranslatables which are not, which cannot be, which does not have the exact synonym or meaning in English. So we need to retain those words. We need to look at the language more carefully to, as Shrikantji was mentioning, explained so beautifully. So that these are the, this is, when we say Indian and Bharati, we don't mean we need to have a copyright or we need a royalty. We need that it is important to recognize the tradition and remain rooted, so that there is a check and balance. Having said that, having said that, in India, that kind of infrastructure is coming up. My own PhD is in the Karma Yoga, spiritual climate and its impact on customers' experience. I did it with the Rajan Gupta sir at MDI, and I could get a job. I had offers from IIMs, I had offers from some very good reputed colleges. Eventually, I joined IIT Bombay. One of our students, my students are also working in the similar field, and a couple of them are having, and they are working on the Karma Yoga or positive psychology, and few of them I have already started getting offers from IIMs. So means that there is a recognition, there is a possibility of conducting this kind of research. We are doing it, so you can also do it. That's the.
Now I come to my next question. Now, how does one as an individual get involved with larger scale research projects, or even if it's a qualitative, it can still be a larger scale research project. And how does an individual, without the backing of any grants or any, because it takes a long time to do this sort of research, a long time. You can't just do it on the side of, 20 minutes a day. It's not your morning meditation 20 minutes and evening meditation 20 minutes. It's when you're doing the research, you have to sit and look at the data, whether it's words or pictures or whether it's numbers, whatever it is, you're looking at it and contemplating on it day in and day out, and you can't just say it's a 20-minute, well, I guess you could, but how does somebody like myself, who's, from a grassroots, in the grassroots world, how do we get involved in such a research when we're interested, but the grants don't often come to individuals like us?
In India, the best thing is to get associated with some institution and register yourself as a PhD scholar. There are some institutions, and then it depends on, so if your research interest is in this kind of area, due diligence, the faculty members, are there some professors who are guide in these kind of research areas? So that's the first requirement. When you see that there are people interested and capable of guiding you on these topics, then you have to. India, the challenge is also of the cracking the exams. Huge population. For any good exam, you have so many competitors. In our department, in the School of Management, about 200 people apply for the PhD program, 150, 100 around people appear for the test and exam, and eventually 4 or 5 are offered the scholarship. So that is a population phenomena. So many people, there has to be an exam. That's the situation. But there are options. SRI has professors who have guided the this area. In Bangalore itself, I am Bangalore. Professor Yesh Srinivas is here. Professor Srinivas will be offering a session day after tomorrow. He is with the IIM Bangalore. SVYASA means it's a yoga university that also has a management department. So they are not enough. I agree, but there are a few. Professor Srinivas, would you like to share something?
Yeah, she's in Bangalore. I think we should connect. I'm in IIM Bangalore. We can have a longer discussion on phone or chat about possibilities in India. I myself has not contributed much, but I know people who have done a lot of work, and I have had the opportunity of guiding some bright students in these areas. So I can kind of quickly give you some, maybe offline. So that would be good.
Yes, that would be wonderful. I will get your contact information from.
Yeah, I just look at IIM Bangalore, my Srinivas organizational behavior area.
Okay.
So
Ashish, wonderful presentation. I really liked.
Soumya, I don't think you would have imagined this kind of answer from Professor Srinivas himself.
That, I mean, I'm actually, to be honest, I'm about to pee in my pants, but I'm not going to do that. Because that's just so, it's very touching. I don't know. And you know, what you said also is, at the end of your talk, the same thing, it was so touching to me that you said, next year, somebody else will be giving this talk. Some of you will be giving these talks. And that's so, you know, that's very touching. I messaged Anish ji also that the work that we're doing with prison women, yoga for prison women and special needs children, we would love to understand. But again, I come from a qualitative background and I don't want to do quantitative research work. I don't want to look at numbers, because every experience is so unique. It's so subjective to that individual. Like, we may have 10 children with autism who are between this age, and another 10 but every child experiences it differently, what the yoga practice is. And it may be a 45-minute pranayama session. It may be yoga nidra. It may be it may be a satsang also. And it may be directed at one child, but they all as individual pick up different aspects. And so it's subjective. This is where, we've been working with 500 children for the last 7 years, but we have not been able to do research because I have not yet known how do I bring this concept of research to such a subjective research in an object. Yes, I see there's somebody else is going to speak. So let me stop talking.
Yes, good afternoon,
Good afternoon,
Ashish ji and Dr. Rajesh. My question is for Dr. Rajesh. This qualitative research papers are not available, at least in my college library. I'm teaching at IIM Business School, and we have got a good amount of books. Ashish was one of the visiting guest lecturers in our college some years back. Do you remember me, Ashish?
So sorry, but I remember IIM.
Qualitative research, IIM, Kharghar, Navi Mumbai. These research papers, qualitative, are very few available. Where to find? My problem is that.
Yes. So if there are no papers, then you are you can say you are lucky, because that is a gap you can fill in. But mostly, I don't think there will be dearth of papers in any method part. There will be some papers which are doing qualitative research. Qualitative research is just a method. What we need to fix first is, are you asking the right question? And that is the most important thing. The question can be answered in a particular method depending upon the question, and that is where the importance of qualitative comes in. If it is focusing on subjective experiences, words, narratives, then you have no choice but to use qualitative research. So it is not necessarily that you focus on qualitative research in yoga only. You focus on your question. And if that question requires qualitative research, there are multiple books, multiple contexts where people have done qualitative research. For example, in identity creation. So how do people create their own identity as a researcher, as a doctor, as a manager in society, in organization, etc., etc. There is a huge number of qualitative studies in that. You can draw from those papers and do your research in yoga practices where does yoga, I'm just thinking aloud, does yoga transforms your identity? Do you see yourself as a different person, as embedded in, say, you were seeing yourself as embedded in XYZ sphere, now the sphere is expanded or contracted, whatever. So you can look at qualitative research done in identity research and then bring it into the yoga. So it is important for you to understand that most important thing is first identify the right questions, and those questions, if they are interesting, anybody, whether he is from Western or Eastern world, will be interested in. Just to build upon what I think Soumya, whatever the question was asked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, should I do research in Harvard or should I do research in India? Doesn't matter. The most important thing is you should not dissect the concept in such a way that it loses its originality. That is the most important thing. If you can do it in Harvard, not a problem at all, but just don't dissect it so much that it loses its original meaning itself. And that's where the language, the skill of language might come into the picture, your conceptualization might come into the picture, etc. So you can actually unicast me anytime. I will give you a lot of there are places where you can access papers from your home. You need not go to the institutional library itself. Okay, the Science Hub being one of the important initiatives by one of the researchers in neurosciences, who has created this beautiful resource for anybody. You want to access any paper anywhere, use that resource.
And sir, can you tell any prominent site to look for such things? Any prominent website?
So that's where I told you, you can look at EBSCO, you can look at A to Z, you can look at Science Hub, you can look at Google Scholar.